Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Okay, I want to talk about where our nation is at the moment. I think, and I know I've spoken about this several times before, and I've specifically spoken about the verse that I want to bring up here. I want to talk about Romans 1 and relate that to where we are within Australia. But I'm really concerned about the spiritual health of our nation. I think we're in extremely bad place. I think our nation as a whole, if you just want to generalize, has very much walked away from God, walked away from acknowledging God. We've embraced the carnal, we've embraced uh, paganism. Paganism has made a quite a comeback within the nation, and especially women, females in this nation seem to have really embraced paganism. We see a lot of pagan festivals coming up. People going out and having goddess festivals and this kind of thing. And so paganism, denial of God, worshiping the created, people worshiping uh, Mother Earth or Gaia, however you want to say it, which is just pagan worship. But seems to be where our nation's at. And I read I've been looking at what's happening within news headlines, and it would appear that we are sitting in a time where our leaders are unable to make wise decisions. Just the decisions that you see our leadership making, I'm talking federal and state, they do not make sense. A lot of just your everyday Aussie will be sitting there going, "What is happening? Why are you doing this? This doesn't make no sense." It seems like our leaders are purposely trying to destroy the country. And I don't think they are purposely trying to do it. I just think it's related back to Romans because they have a debased mind. I'll read it just to refresh your memory from what I'm talking about. I'll read from verse 21. It says, because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things, worshipping everything that's created rather than worshipping the Creator God Almighty. Therefore, God also gave them up to uncleanness in the lusts of their hearts to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator who is blessed forever. For this reason, God gave them up to vile passions. But even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. So, lesbianism. Likewise, also the men, leaving the natural use of the women, burning in their lust for one another, men with men, committing what is shameful and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error which was due. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil mindedness. They are whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. When I read, it says in verse 28, God gave them over to a debased mind. I was talking to someone else about this, and they said, it's almost like it's saying God just like said, just threw his hands up and said, you know what, go for it. If this is what you want, I'm just like letting you go. When you look up the meaning of debased, or in the old King James, it says reprobate mind. A reprobate means, well, for as a noun, it's an unprincipled person. Um, it also says if you're a reprobate, to be a reprobate mind, um, it's morally unprincipled, depraved, condemned. That's as an adjective. As a noun, it means a person of bad character and habits, or a disreputable or roguish person. And when you look up the meaning for debased, like the New King James uses the word translated as debased, debased mind. The meaning for debased, a verb which means to reduce in quality or value. So as a verb, yeah, to lower in character or quality. I was thinking about, in relation to Romans 1, God gave them over to a debased mind. So a debased mind would seem to be a mind that's of lesser quality, literally is unable to think properly, unable to make a wise decision. They've just got a mind that's of lesser quality. So, to talk about all this, to I want to go through a few different articles, and from what I see of different leaders, people in leadership roles, I suppose, or even if they're not what I would consider actual leaders, but people who are in roles in areas within Australia who have influence anyway. And I had noticed, there's a lot of talk this last couple of weeks about the Australian female uh, soccer team, the Matildas, soccer, football, however you want to talk, however you want to say it. This article had come up and it's talking about the Matildas. I thought, oh, I'll have a read of this. It's talking about the Matildas and going through the people in their personal lives, and talks. So I'm reading this article and it's talking about Matildas and who their partners were. Thought, wow, that's seven seven of them within the one team that are lesbian. I thought, well, it seems like a very high ratio. All these women, and I'll just say it, so quite a few of them look very kind of very tomboyish, let's put it that way. I thought, well, okay, that's very strange. It's strange that you've got such a in one team you've got, what is that, seven, at least seven of them out of the one team that are actually in a homosexual relationship. Very high percentage there. I was thinking, isn't it strange that all these women, and I'd been thinking about Romans 1 then, women giving themselves over. And I thought, well, okay, so such a high level of. Anyway, so I've been reading all these other articles that also come up about Australia and what's happening. And I'll dive over to another one that talks about some decisions that the Australian government have been making. And I thought, well, it's just weird. Some of the things that the Australian government has been doing, the decisions that they're making. We'll have a look at this. This headline here says yogis to be rushed into Australia ahead of tradies under draft policy. The federal opposition and housing industry bodies have hit out at a draft policy that would see migrant yoga and martial arts instructors rushed into Australia ahead of some skilled construction workers. It's so Jobs and Skills Australia has released its draft core skills occupations list, essentially the types of workers that could be prioritized for temporary skilled visas. I'll go over to another article so you can see, because there's not just that one article. This next one here talking about, where is it? The Master Builders Association, they've said that the decision to boot tradies from migrant skills list does not make any sense. So they're talking about the same thing. It said the Masters Builders Australia CEO Danita Wan says she is perplexed and bemused by the Labor government's decision to leave off tradies from the draft priority skills list for migrants. Like I said, it's it's perplexing. You sit there going, why would you do that? We need skilled migrants. We need more tradespersons coming over, tradespeople coming here. We have a trades shortage, and yet they seem to have left tradesmen off the new immigration list for the people that they want. I thought, isn't it strange how our government doesn't seem to be able to make decisions that really they don't seem to be able to make wise decisions at the moment. And even someone like this, the Master Builders CEO, Danita Wan, just says it's perplexing. Why are they doing that? This is not what we need. We don't need yogis. We don't need martial arts instructors. We need tradesmen. And yet, I don't know. So it seems like we've got a nation where our leaders aren't able to make sensible decisions about who they're going to allow into the country. I did the story the other week about, or just the other day about the Sudanese man who really should be kicked out of the country. He's just a thug and a criminal, uh, committing domestic violence, violence against other people, knife crimes, very violent person. Now he's put his hand up and claims that he identifies as Australian Indigenous, and they haven't deported him. They're allowing him to stay so far in the country because he's identifying as an Indigenous Australian. Like I said, it seems like a nation that cannot make a wise decision. We're unable to. Our leadership is unable to. Our judicial system is unable to. Our government ministers are unable to make the smart decisions. We can't even decide properly who can come into the country, let alone who can stay, even though they're thugs and criminals. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you, and this is about our E Commission. The lovely E Commission that was trying to silence the people on X, people from Canada who'd made posts about how dangerous some people within the transgender community are. And the wisdom. This just shows, I think, people who consider themselves to be wise, but who are definitely not wise.
Mr. Rembrandt, the eSafety website lists refusing to use a trans person's preferred pronouns online or posting a video that dead names them as an example of gendered hate, and that deliberately misgendering someone online is a form of gendered violence. How do you justify these statements in a country where a male rapist and child sex offender can be placed in a women's prison and access women's facilities?
I fail to see the connection to that specific incident, Senator. That's kind of drawing a long bow, I would say. But I'm going to turn over to Mr. Dagg, who has responsibility for the education prevention information on our site.
Thank you, Commissioner. The sources that you were referring to, Senator, have been informed in significant part by our consultation with the LGBTIQ community, who've told us about the impact of misgendering and dead naming on trans members of that community. And the resources reflect that kind of advice.
Did you consult with any women's rights groups to understand how it might impact upon them to be in a position where they can't call out male sex offenders being placed in women's prison and access women's facilities in an online space because the Safety Commissioner has a position that that is gendered violence?
Well, like the Commissioner said, Senator, that's drawing an extremely long bow. The resources that we've created don't go to any judicial decisions.
Now, I don't know whether they are doing this on purpose or whether they're willfully ignorant of what's going on in the rest of the world. This kind of thing actually does happen in the real world. They are so, like I said, these are some people, this is the commissioner here, this lady here. They are people who profess to be wise. But like the Word of God says, they are futile in their own thinking. And this is what I mean when I'm talking about it seems like God's just given people over to a debased mind, a mind of lesser quality. They cannot even see the truth. They cannot see the facts. People are asking them straightforward facts. And for the life of them, they've got no idea. They do not know. Is it willful ignorance?
Is made to place a particular person within a particular correctional facility. That's a matter for the judiciary. If you're interested in understanding the nature of consultation and the process that we went through to develop those resources, I'm very happy to take that on notice and return to you.
I was about to say I might put some questions on notice around that because I would certainly be interested to know. I'm guessing, given that you've referenced it's seemingly a long bow to draw, that you aren't aware of the case that I've referred to I've spoken about this in the Senate before, where a man who was previously convicted of raping his own 6-year-old daughter committed a serious sexual assault on a woman in Australia and was referred to as a woman by the media and the court before being placed in a women's prison.
What does this have to do with online safety, Senator?
Well, I think the question is it your position that is it the E-Safety Commission's position that referring to a male rapist or as a man or as a male in an online forum, posting about it on Facebook, is misgendering and therefore a form of violence?
I think I will take that on notice, but I am not required to provide a personal opinion, nor would I in a case like this, nor would I make an on-the-spot judgment about a particular live investigation without the proper investigations being done. So I'm not going to be drawn on that, Senator. Thank you.
Ms Inman-Grant, am I or any other Australian at risk of the E-Safety Commission taking action to have social media posts removed if I or any other Australian refer to a male sex offender as a man?
We are not. There are specific provisions in the Online Safety Act that go against political commentary, and that's what I believe you're talking about. What we are looking at, and in the case that was raised earlier, which is now before the AAT, our assessment of the content, it only goes to serious harm and whether the post or posts were intended to menace, harass and cause offence to the Australian individual by an ordinary, reasonable person in all the circumstances. So a very high threshold. I would also note that all the valid ACA complaints, which is adult cyber abuse complaints that we receive, only 6% resort in formal notices. So you know that when those thresholds have been met, that they're very serious attempts to not just merely cause emotional and psychological harm to an Australian person, but you know, again, you're wanting to engage me on a political debate and personal. No, I'm not going to censor any political commentary about trans or anti-trans material. That is not my role.
But
She said that's not her role, but that seems to be exactly the position that she's taken so far when it came to the gentleman from Canada who pointed out issues with a transgender person there and them being, well, interacting with children. And yet she's taken exactly that kind of position. So anyway, we'll hear what else they've got to say.
your website clearly states that misgendering someone online is gendered violence. So you're saying there is a risk.
Well, if you look at most of the social media platforms, they all have within their hate speech policies content around gendering and misgendering and dead naming. And if you look at data from, if we're going to talk about the online context from the Trans Project, 9 out of 10 trans Australians has experienced serious online hate or violence online. So I think the proportion of harm that that particular community experiences is off the charts vis-a-vis others. And back to the context that Mr. Dagg noted, we have to consider that in terms of looking at vulnerability of specific communities.
Sure, and I'm a woman who's spoken out about these issues in the online space before, and I've copped my fair share of abuse too. But I'm not sure.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
I'm not sure I necessarily have the same protections in place.
Absolutely, Senator, you do. If you reported to the platform and there was serious cyber abuse and they didn't take action, we would, and you reported to us, we would absolutely look at that with the same lens and would like to help you if you were experiencing serious harm as a result of that abuse.
The test in legislation is that a reasonable person would have to conclude that it is likely that material was intended to have an effect of causing serious harm to a particular Australian adult. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, that's correct, Senator. That's the first limb of the test.
Do you think that a reasonable Australian would agree that women are entitled to refer to people who are male and seek access to female facilities as male?
We're going back to the example that you were citing before, Senator, the facts of which I'm not familiar with. The test is one about establishing whether or not the material is intended to cause serious harm. I don't think anything can be read into that test that would suggest engaging in a debate about a person's presentation would necessarily meet that bar. But again,
just be aware when they start talking about these are the people that want to decide whether anything you say has caused someone else serious harm. So it's up to them to decide what they, this is what they consider causing serious harm. Like the example that the senator brought up, a gentleman who's raped his own daughter, then gone to prison, attacked other people. They don't seem nearly as concerned about victims, female victims, of physical violence. They don't seem nearly as concerned about those victims as much as someone who may have someone who is already, may I say, suffering from a mental health illness. They don't seem nearly as concerned about the actual victims of physical violence as they are of these people. It's very concerning. Like I said, these are people who confess to be wise, but in reality, they are foolish. God gives them over to a debased mind. They profess to be wise. They have become fools. And this is why I was looking at all of these different things online the last week or so and just thinking, where is our nation at the moment? We have, and it's not just the Matilda football team, it's in women's sport in general, it seems to be filled with lesbians, like lesbians everywhere. I thought I'd heard when the World Cup was on and the ladies World Cup was playing, I heard blokes at work joking about all the lesbians, and I hadn't taken any notice. I wasn't watching the football, and I thought they were joking, and apparently they weren't. The team was full of lesbians, and it seems to be rife within female sport. We have a nation which seems to have embraced, this is Pride Month at the moment, embraced homosexuality. We're embracing our leaders anyway, our bureaucrats embracing the transgender community, embracing this ideology that really is built on a lie. It's built on a lie. You cannot change your gender, your sex. And we've got a nation where our leaders cannot make decisions they cannot seem to make a wise decision. They seem to make decisions that just do not make any sense whatsoever. We have an e-safety commissioner who's decided that it's her job to go after people who would be speaking up for themselves or speaking out against violent criminals because the words that they say might hurt the other person's feelings, even though it's a male who was violent against other females. And then we've got a government, like I said, who would rather, even though we need people with legitimate trade skills, they would rather bring in people who are yogis and martial arts instructors. Australia, I think, and I really would like to know what you think about this from a biblical, a theological perspective. Australia has been given over. I think we are sitting smack bang within the middle of what it's saying in Romans 1. God has given us up, given this nation of Australia up to uncleanness in the lust of our own hearts because we have exchanged the truth of God and worshipped the creature. And God's given us up, this whole nation, to vile passions. For even our women have exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. And men have burnt men with men committing what is shameful. And even as we have not liked to retain God in our knowledge, God has given us over to a debased mind, a mind of lesser quality, a mind where our leadership cannot make sensible, quality decisions. I think we're in a bad place. I think spiritually we're in a bad place. I think we have a nation that embraces paganism, embraces idolatry, embraces lustful desires, tells everyone, no, you can live your best life. You can live for the desires in your heart. Whatever you want, whatever lust you have, chase after that, because if that makes you happy, well, then that's good. Jesus says in John 14:6, he says, Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. There is one way to heaven. There's one way to salvation. That's through the Lord Jesus Christ. You can't just chase after your own lustful desires like the world wants us to. We live in this age where everyone says, well, no, you just chase after whatever you want. Whatever makes you happy, whatever makes you feel good, chase after that, and that will bring you happiness. That will bring you completeness in this life. Friends, that will take you straight to hell. We are living in a time where this nation of Australia is being judged. We've been given over to a debased mind. That's my opinion. Let me know what you think. I really would like to know. My name is Jay Fallon. And hey, I apologize, but I'm going to have to put this episode, I'm going to be putting this episode in a lot more from now on. I'm going to be putting them on the subscriber list. I've just been getting a lot more strikes and different things against, coming at me. So I think it's safer if I just start putting more things on the subscriber list for Spotify and Apple and that way, the people that want to listen, I'm not going to get marked, hopefully, by people who are actually wanting to listen. So I'm just trying to get ahead of things before it gets too late and I just get knocked off completely. My name is Jay Fallon. Thanks for listening to The Slippery Slope.
And say it isn't real, and please don't go away. Just give me one more day. What if I could? What if I could turn back time? I'd make you smile again. And if I could unbreak your heart, and we could start again. What if I could? What if I could turn back time? I'd make you smile again. And if I could unbreak your heart, and we could start again. We could start again. We could start again. We could start again.